Hello, everybody. I'm Marilyn Bradford, and I'm joined by Pam Houghteling.
Hello.
Hello. Didn't you love her shirt? It's so awesome and bright and cheerful and sunny. For another episode of the Irreverent Therapists. Yes. So this episode is how to deal with difficult people. Now, of course, that doesn't apply to me.
Or me.
We're so easy to get along with. How to handle difficult people. Your mother-in-law always has to be right. Of course, I know. You have a friend and everything has to be about her. I know your dog died, but let me tell you how bad it was for me to lose my bathrobe. Your boss criticizes everything you do. What's possible here? There are many ways to handle difficult people without you being a victim. Come join the Irreverent Therapists for some great tips and tools to help you get the upper hand with anyone in your life. Manipulation 101.
Yay, my favorite topic.
Absolutely. So it is an interesting dilemma because you have to decide, what does it mean for someone to be difficult? And those are some examples. Basically, it's when they have to have their point of view, they're right, you're wrong, and they want power over you. They absolutely do. I just had a recent thing with, I have a real estate thing going on, and this particular person, these are my houses, is telling me how it's going to be.
Because they know better than you, Marilyn.
They know better than me, absolutely. So one tactic you can use is you can pretend that you're agreeing with him. Oh, I totally get what you're talking about. Yeah, I totally get that. Am I going to do what he says? Absolutely not. But that's all right. You kind of mollify them. So that's one way of doing it.
Well, and let me just point out something with what you just talked about, because you could, if this real estate person who you're paying for a service, right? An ongoing thing. So they work for you, and this real estate person is basically telling you what to do, kind of assuming that you don't know anything and that they can take advantage of you from the things I know. And so you can either start to react to that, right? Be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're, treating me this way. And I have to stand up for myself, and I have to get them to see that I know what I'm doing, right? You're trying to get them to change and be different than how they're showing up. And that's a fight, right? And you're not doing that. Instead, you're like, this person can have his point of view, and I'm still the one in charge, and I'm going to choose what I'm going to choose.
Yes.
And so you're not having to batter at things, with him. You're able to because when you talk about, you have your space, what works for you. You're choosing what works for you. And there's nothing he can do to throw you off base. Right. Or if he does, you just go, wait, nope, that's not mine. What's my reality? And then you're moving forward. So.
Well, absolutely. And one way to move forward and also kind of disarm them is to play stupid in a way. Or, you say we need to do this. Can you let me know a little bit more about that? What does that create? Yeah. So you ask questions, because when you ask a question and don't, as Pam was just saying, resist and react, in a way you put them on the defensive.
Yeah.
Because they have to answer your question. Yeah. And I'm just a stupid older lady. What do I know about any of this?
I'm so confused. Could you explain this to me more? How is that good for my, how is that benefiting me?
Yeah, exactly.
So I have a story for you.
Okay.
And I'll keep the details short. But when you first become a social worker and you're first licensed, you need a couple of years of supervised work, right? Where there's a more experienced social worker there to kind of talk to and work through cases with and stuff. And so my job out of social work school was, part of my deal. You get pay and you get this supervision. And the man who ran this mental health center was really a total asshole. Not so easy to work with. And, after a month or two, he called me in and he was like, oh, this is no longer working. You and your supervisor need to do the supervision outside of hours, regular work hours and stuff, which would have meant my supervisor having to, she had a long commute, having to stay longer. Both of us wouldn't be being paid. Like it was like, no. And he tried, basically what I did was I was just like, this was the deal you signed up, that I signed up under. This is actually part of my pay working for you guys, and you need to honor your agreement, right? And he tried everything. He tried guilting me of like, oh, women, they get their supervision and then they get pregnant and then they leave, and I was like, yep. And this is the deal that we had. And basically, so sometimes someone who's difficult to deal with, they're going to try everything they can to derail you and to get you upset or get you doubting yourself or, anything. And like, oh, if you were being reasonable, you would see it my way. They'll try everything. And if you have that sense of what works for you in this situation and what, I was able to sit there and have none of it affect me. And finally, he was like, oh, okay. And he's someone who would storm around and really interact in very unkind ways with people. He never bothered me. He never came near me. He let me have anything I wanted because I hadn't caved and let him have that power over me.
Yes.
But it didn't come from fight. It came from being.
I think that's a great story. And that's a great example. Let's look at some of these other things, like the person who always had the mother-in-law who always has to be right.
I had one of those.
Oh, yeah. So how did you deal with that, Pam?
Well, honestly, at first, not well. Both my husband and I, we used to spend hours talking about his mother and how to handle things with her and, what can we say here and what can we do there? And it was when I got introduced to some of the tools of access consciousness, and especially one called Interesting Point of View, where it's just like, it's just their point of view. My boss at the social workplace, it was his point of view that I shouldn't have this in as part of my deal. And if I just, if you see it as it's just a point of view, it's not something I have to react to or get them to change their mind or anything. And so she was actually really upset. We were all having dinner and my son was about 7 and she was really upset because my son and I were talking to each other. I mean, there's a whole history here I could go into, but she would kind of erupt and she did. And whereas usually I would go into defending my son, defending me, if only she'd be different than she was, then life would be good. And Warren and I could be happy because we'd be done with trying to deal with her. And instead, I had just come from this access class and I was like, in my head, that is so interesting that she's choosing this.
Wow.
And it's just a choice and she could choose this or she could choose something else. And because I was interesting point of view, which, another way of saying is allowance. I was in allowance of what she was choosing. She was just choosing it. I don't have to do anything with this. It lasted 30 seconds. Instead of what typically for my husband and I would be days of us trying to figure out what do we do about his mother? How can we handle this differently next time and stuff like that. So you can diffuse things by, as you said, going into question, getting them to look at a question by you being interesting point of view, by you knowing what works for you and what's true for you and not getting rocked. By them.
Yeah, that's a great story. A great example of when you don't resist and react, you don't connect the fight that then goes on forever.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and one of them is you have a friend and everything always has to be about them. Now, I've had a few of those. And I let that go on for probably way too long.
Mm-hmm.
What I finally realized, a situation like that with anybody who's in your life, now it's a little bit harder when it's a mother-in-law because she's going to be there. But if it's a friend,
no, you can disown her, you know, if you don't want to.
or even a neighbor, and don't be afraid to leave a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you're just so busy. I'm so sorry. I just don't have any time right now. I had this fairly recently with a friend, and it was interesting because I talked to Gary Douglas, the founder of Access, later about it just a few days ago. Hey, and because she was just going on and she was gaslighting me and, you know, making herself really important. And I was just like, oh, I totally get it. Yeah. Thank you very much for that. I left them like, I am never spending time with that person again. And you don't need to say anything like, do you get that you're gaslighting me? You know, it's always about you. There's no point in bringing that up. You're just going to cause an argument or a fight, or why would you bother? You can always ask a couple of questions to yourself. Is this person a contribution? Does he or she assist me in being greater and our lives being greater? Is there a mutual interest in what's going on with people, or is it all about them? Is this person gaslighting me or someone else? And you don't have to stay in that relationship. One quick thing about gaslighting: if someone's gaslighting you, gaslight them back, because that will totally stop the gaslighting. Yeah, I've tried it a few times. It's awesome. And it's a lot of fun too, if they start it. But I do have a question for you, Pam, because I don't know how I would handle this.
Yeah.
So I have some good friends who own a lovely store, and they have a lot of high-end things in it. And then they have some things that are not so high-end. But come Christmas time or any of the holidays or tourist season, they'll get someone who's like, well, I want to see this in purple. Well, you know, maybe gold. Well, now this says, because they have a few not so expensive things, this says $349. Do you think you could do better than that? And they take up enormous amounts of time.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of other people in the store. So how would you handle that one? Or what words of advice?
Yeah, I'm going to go a little bit over to the side and then come back to that. So basically for anyone, right? Because what's a difficult person? It's only difficult if you're letting it be difficult.
Oh, that's
right.
True.
Like, I mean, whether it's somebody who's like, whatever they're doing, it's how you be with it is making it difficult or not.
Yes, that's true.
So, and there's also if this is going on, then you do this. So to me, the basic underlying things are: one, you yourself go into question. What is this? What can I do with it? Can it change? If so, how do I change it? I mean, notice just with that, is there more space suddenly?
Yes, totally.
Yeah. And so I always start there, because then there's like space from which to look, okay, what next? You know, what's my next choice of a tool or whatever? The other thing is you want to be dealing with what is, not what you think it should be. Right. So,
good point.
You know, like, for example, with my mother-in-law, you know, I spent years, if only she would not be so difficult, our lives would be so much easier. Well, that doesn't get me anywhere, because she is who she is. She's got all kinds of things that have formed how she is in the world and how she interacts with people and stuff like that. So, you know, with your store example, right? You know, the store owners could be sitting there going, oh God, I just wish this woman would, you know, is there any way we could get rid of her, you know, quickly?
We need an eject button.
Right. That's not really going to help. going along with everything she's doing also doesn't help, because they're stressed, they're busy, they're like want to take care of customers who are actually ready to buy something, right? But if they're defining her as a problem, then she is a problem. If they're defining her as difficult, they're experiencing it as difficult. Instead, if they're like, okay, here she comes, like, what's possible here? What energy can I be that will create something different? And then there's actually, I mean, there's so many different ways that you could actually handle this. I mean, one would be if she's like, oh, hey, I want to see this. And they could be like, hey, yep, I can show you this real quick. I have a lot of people to take care of. So let's see, so let's show this to you. I'm going to put it back. You can keep looking for a few more minutes and I'll come back to you. Right. So that they're not letting her stop their momentum. Right. They could, I'm just thinking, tell me again, like something that she would say. So I have a specific.
Well, I'm just not sure which one of these I want. And I don't feel like you're showing me everything that you could show me here. And I would like a discount.
It might be that we just don't have what you're looking for. So let me suggest some other stores I think might suit your taste better.
Oh, great.
Right. So you're sending her off to somewhere else. Like if there's one of the tools that Marilyn and I use is called "You're Right, I'm Wrong." And that is, because so often where we come into conflict or feel like people are difficult to deal with, it's, we have our point of view, they have theirs. We're trying to get them to see our way.
Yeah.
And instead, if you be that energy of, oh, you're right, I'm wrong, there's nowhere for them to go. And it doesn't mean that you're buying their point of view. It just means, yeah, you're right. That is your point of view.
Exactly.
And so, this woman's point of view is you don't have what I want, but you should, and you need to try to take care of me to get me what I want. And I want
you need to spend lots of time with me.
And you need lots, and that gives me another idea, but I'll finish this thought. So by you going, oh, you're right, this isn't quite what you're looking for. And I know we don't have anything else. So I think, there's this other amazing store that you could go check out. I highly suggest it. Have a good day, and you move on off. But the other thing is when you said she wants to take up a lot of time, it's like there's something there she's trying to get energetically. Yeah. She wants your time. She wants your energy. She wants your attention. There's something called energy flows, and you can actually just ask for energy from all over the universe to flow through you to this person, like a tsunami of energy. It doesn't take anything from you, but it's actually giving her a whole lot of energy. I used to do this with my kids because, I had little toddlers and I was trying to work from home. And they'd want my attention. And what I found is if I just stopped what I was doing and actually gave them a lot of attention and flowed a lot of energy to them, in 5 minutes, they were ready to go off and do other things. Whereas if I sat there going, oh my gosh, I just need a few more minutes. Can't you behave? Or, going into that, then I'm thinking they're difficult. If only my kids would settle down and I could get this done, which doesn't help. But instead just flow them that energy. And then it's something that they're looking for actually gets addressed.
Yes.
You can ask for whatever it is that she requires. I'm contributing it. And you don't have to know what it is. And it doesn't take from you. It just kind of, you're just asking for it to direct towards her. And you might find it much easier to use some of these other interventions and have them work really well.
I love that. In fact, you told me about that before, and I used it with my cats, and it worked really well.
Yeah.
Just 5 to 10 minutes of petting and flowing energy. They're fun. I'm going to go eat. I'm having an egg.
Yeah. It's
really a great tool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to mention one other thing, and that is if you have a family, like family of origin, where you go home for Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever it is, and it's difficult, here are some things that you can do. One, before you even go into the house, become aware of your energy. Are you dreading? Are you going like this? Are you going back? And expand out. Create and claim basically your own universe.
Yeah.
And when you're in there, you can use some of these tools we've talked about. I totally get that, Mom. And you also want to ask yourself, my universe, their universe.
Yeah.
And if you get, I'm going in, I'm doing a headlong dive into their universe, I'm going to come back to me. Hey, Dad, I'm going to go outside for just have a few minutes of quiet time. You need to take care of you in those situations, because what families tend to do is they remember you from when you were 3, 6, and 9, and they put you in a box, and they have no idea who you are at 33.
Yeah.
So don't try to convince them who you are at 33.
Yeah.
Just using the tools that Pam was talking about with that, the terrible person who comes into your office, and I just labeled them difficult, but or into your store, using those same tools. What do these people require?
Yeah.
And what's going to be easy for me?
Yes.
Don't lose sight of you ever.
Exactly. Don't ever lose sight of you.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say, there was a podcast that I did with Shannon O'Hara that you can find on my website that is called How to Deal with Difficult People. I think it's How to Deal with Mean People, not even just difficult, but mean people. And I have some different things on my website for handling people. And then you can also visit Marilyn's website. She has, an amazing amount of stuff there too. So,
and our websites are
PamHoughteling.com and MarilynBradford.com.
Yes.
They'll be in the notes.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us. And I hope you found these tips and tools useful, and you go forth and have ease with anybody and everybody.
Yes. And I need to cue the music.